This happened just over a year ago. I was working as an overnight nurse at our local hospital for 5 years. I knew the building well. The dark hallways and flickering lights made the nights feel alive. I always felt strange energy at that hour. I've never forgotten what happened. On my third night back from vacation, I noticed a new patient in room 306. I felt a rush of anxiety as I walked to the door. He had no records, no information about him at all. It made my heart race. I cautiously opened the door. He mumbled something. My name. I froze, unsure of what to do. I left feeling uneasy, telling myself it was just a coincidence. The next night was ordinary, or so I thought. I checked on him again, and when I walked into his room, it hit me. That strange feeling returned. He looked at me with deep, knowing eyes and called out my name once more. A chill ran down my spine. It didn't stop there. Over the nights that followed, I noticed my things at the nurse's station were moved. My coffee mug had been across the room when I was sure I left it on the counter. It wasn't the only strange thing. Equipment continued to malfunction near me. Heart monitors blared and screens lit up for no reason. I also felt this lingering sense of déjà vu. Each time I passed the man in room 306, it felt like I had done it before. Conversations hushed as I entered break rooms. Words turned into whispers. I caught bits about patients who vanished from their rooms. My heart sank. What if he was one of them? I tried to shake the fear off, but I was drawn to him. Then, one night, I walked into room 306 again. My heart raced, but I had to ask him. I opened my mouth, ready to confront him, but he just stood there, staring. I felt cold dread. Before I could speak, he whispered, "You'll understand soon." I turned to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. I felt panic surge through me. I pushed it open. The hallway felt different, empty. I was all alone. Then he asked, "Why are you with her?" I turned around. Nobody was there. That night crushed something inside me. The following shifts felt even heavier. I was haunted by shadows and memories. I couldn't shake the feeling that room 306 was tied to something dark. I'd look at the door, expecting to see him again. I wanted answers, but dread filled me. Each night shift, my reality unraveled a little more. I was still a nurse, but something was wrong. The energy in those halls was thick now, and I never felt safe. I often stood in the break room trying to piece together what I saw and heard. The whispers never left my mind. I couldn't forget him. After all, he knew my name. Even now, a year later, my heart races at the memory. I still hear his voice in the dark. My shifts never feel the same. I wonder if I'll ever understand what happened. The dread lingers, always waiting for me to walk back into room 306. I didn't want to go back to work, but I had no choice.
That evening, I stepped into the hospital, the familiar sounds of machines and distant voices wrapping around me. As I walked through the doors, a cold shiver crept down my neck. I was back on night shift, and I felt that weight, a heavy feeling of being watched. The night would be long. When I got to the nurse's station, I found my coffee mug still in its usual spot. I sighed in relief. At least things haven't completely changed. But as I grabbed it, I noticed a new calendar hanging on the wall. The dates were wrong. My heart dropped. The month was blank, but the dates were filled with red markings, highlighting specific days. I flipped through the calendar, and chills went down my spine. Each marked day had a name written in parentheses. Some were familiar, some were not. One name made my stomach twist. It was James Miller, the name I remembered from the missing patients list. He had vanished the night I felt so uneasy. I turned, heart racing, and glanced toward room 306. The door stood slightly ajar. I could feel a pull, an undeniable urge to investigate. I swallowed hard, hoping I was imagining things. Just as I took a step towards it, I heard a loud crash from the supply room. I jumped, adrenaline rushing through me. I turned to look, but saw nothing. I took a deep breath and forced myself to walk to room 306. As I approached, the air turned colder. I pushed the door open and walked in. The light flickered above, casting eerie shadows. The room was empty. For a moment, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Then I saw it. The bed was unmade, and on the pillow lay a small notebook. I picked it up, the pages filled with shaky handwriting. The words didn't make sense at first. It seemed like a jumbled mess of thoughts and names. But one line stood out. "They're coming for me." My heart raced. As I read further, the name James appeared again. Next to it, a date circled in red matched one of the marked dates from the calendar. I felt sick. Was this a pattern? Something was definitely connected to room 306, and I needed to find out what. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. I froze, the notebook slipping from my fingers. I fumbled for the door, but it shut tight. Panic surged. I could hear whispers, just a faint echo of voices that twisted in the dark. "Help me," one voice said. "You have to stop them." The thoughts raced through my mind. What was happening? Why was this happening? I pressed myself against the door, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Then, that familiar voice from the shadows cut through the dark. "You should have stayed away." Just as I turned, the light returned, illuminating the room. The bed was empty again, but the notebook lay open, as if waiting for me to read more. I wanted to scream, but swallowed the panic. I picked it up again. Then, everything went dark. I found myself back in room 306, but it wasn't quiet anymore.
The whispers hung in the air, drifting around me like smoke. I blinked, trying to orient myself. The darkness was gone, but that eerie feeling lingered, making the hairs on my neck stand up. I could still hear the final whisper, "You should have stayed away." I wanted to dismiss it as an overactive imagination, but deep down, I felt something terrible had happened in this room. I tucked the notebook under my arm and hurried out, glancing down the empty corridor. The silence was suffocating. Each step echoed, and I felt the walls pressing in as if they were about to reveal something hidden. I knew I needed more answers. The calendar was wrong, and so was this night. I decided to find Tammy, the head nurse. She might know something about James or the strange occurrences. I walked briskly to the nurse's station, peering into the break room as I passed. It was empty. I felt a knot in my stomach. This place felt off tonight, like it was holding its breath. "Tammy," I called out, but no response came. A sudden thought crossed my mind. What if she was in room 306? I shook my head, dismissing it. I caught sight of the security desk and approached it. Officer Phil was supposed to be on duty tonight. "Phil," I said, my voice a bit louder than necessary. Still no answer. The chair behind the desk was empty, and a cold wave of unease washed over me. Turning back, I felt a pull towards the supply room. I walked in, hoping to find some sign of life, but all I found were stacked boxes and shelves lined with equipment. I took a deep breath and decided to look around the place. Maybe I could find more about the names in the notebook. As I rummaged through the shelves, my fingers brushed against a cold metal object. Pulling it out, I found it was a key card with a faded logo. It could be for a restricted area. My heart raced. What did I just uncover? I slipped it into my pocket, thinking it might lead to a bigger discovery. Just then, I heard a soft creak behind me. I froze, my heart thudding in my chest. Turning slowly, I expected to see someone or something, but I was met with only shadows. Yet, the feeling of being watched intensified, prickling my skin. Voices. This time they were clearer, a male voice talking with urgency. "Get out!" The warning reverberated off the cold walls. My pulse quickened as I moved instinctively toward the exit, clutching the notebook tightly in my hands. I stepped outside, gasping for breath. The corridor was utterly deserted. No nurses, no patients. It felt like the whole hospital had been drained of life. That's when I noticed a flickering light at the end of the hall. My gut twisted. I should run. I should get out. But something pulled me closer. I needed to know the truth. When I reached the light, I saw a door marked with the same symbol as the key card. I glanced at the notebook, the names swirling in my head like a storm. Then, without thinking, I pulled out the key card and pressed it against the reader.
The light turned green, and the door clicked open. My stomach dropped. Whatever was behind that door, I was about to find out. I stepped through the door, heart racing. The room beyond was dimly lit, contrasting starkly with the fluorescent lights of the corridor. It smelt of sterile equipment and something else, a faint, foul odor that made my stomach churn. Rows of cabinets lined the walls, and the air was heavy with an unsettling silence. As I took a step inside, the door creaked shut behind me. I turned instinctively, but a gentle push from the other side made it impossible to reopen. Panic threatened to rise, but I forced myself to focus. I needed to figure out where I was. I stared around the room. A single table in the center caught my attention. On it lay various medical tools, scalpels, syringes, even something that looked like a surgical saw. The sight made my pulse quicken. This was no ordinary supply room. A chill ran down my spine. Whatever happened here was more than just medical procedures. In one corner, I noticed a stack of boxes. I edged closer, each footstep echoing in the stillness. I pulled the top box open, revealing old medical records. My breath hitched as I recognized a name. James. The very same name from my notebook. A name I had seen associated with both a patient and a mysterious event. I rifled through the files, my fingers trembling as I sought more information. One record caught my eye. It described James as a patient, someone who had died in a procedure. But that wasn't all. In the margins of the document were scrawled words, "Do not resuscitate," and "Avoid room 306." I felt my throat tighten. Why would they avoid that room? Was there a connection to what I had just experienced? Suddenly, another voice broke through the silence. It was faint, almost like a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." My blood ran cold. I glanced around, but no one was in sight. It felt as though the walls themselves were warning me to leave. I knew I should turn back, but curiosity got the better of me. I scanned the remaining boxes, diving deeper into the secrets hidden here. Another box held similar notes, but this time they were regarding other patients. All were underlined with a consistent phrase, "Failed to recover." This room was dark in a way I hadn't anticipated. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something moving. I turned just as a shadow darted between the cabinets, disappearing into the darkness. I swallowed hard. I wasn't alone. "What did you do?" I whispered, hoping for an answer. The only reply was the sound of my own breath echoing in the room. Fear gripped me, but I had to know. More than anything, I wanted the truth. Before I could take another breath, the lights flickered violently. Panic surged within me. My gut told me to run, but I was paralyzed by anticipation. That's when I saw it. A figure standing silently at the doorway, their face hidden in shadow. "Get out!" I heard a voice yell behind them, and I realized it was my only chance to escape. I bolted toward the voice. My heart raced as I navigated the narrow space, dodging the table and boxes. The figure at the doorway looked uncertain, momentarily distracted by the sudden shift. I pushed past them, gasping for air as I stumbled back into the corridor. The hospital hallway felt like a safe haven, but my relief was short-lived. I looked back, my breath coming in short bursts. The figure followed, their silhouette emerging from the shadows. Panic clawed at my throat as I rushed down the corridor, driven by fear. "Wait," the figure called out, their voice strained and urgent. "I'm trying to help you." I hesitated, but kept running. I glanced over my shoulder. They were close now. Fear turned to desperation. I needed to know who they were, what they wanted. I turned into the nearest corridor, heart pounding. I skidded to a stop at a junction, scanning my surroundings for an exit. My eyes locked on a door labeled Supply Room. It was slightly ajar. Could I trust it? With a glance behind, I made the decision in an instant and thrust myself through the doorway, shutting it tight behind me. The inside was dark, lit only by a flickering bulb. I pressed my back against the door, straining to hear anything outside. The voice was gone. Would they come in after me? As I stood there, I tried to gather my thoughts. Who was that figure? Their urgency felt genuine, but I also sensed something off. I needed answers. Glancing around the room, I noticed shelves filled with supplies, bandages, drugs, and equipment. A broken window in the corner caught my eye. If I could get out there, I might escape entirely. The thought made me feel frantic, but the sound of footsteps outside changed everything. I froze, straining to hear. It was them, pacing back and forth in the corridor, calling my name. "Please, just talk to me." They sounded desperate now, almost pleading. "I don't trust you," I yelled, my voice trembling. "You could be lying." "I'm not. I'm here to warn you about the experiments," they shouted back, their voice echoing through the corridor. "They're not supposed to let you find out. Please, you need to listen to me." Experiments. The words sent a jolt through me. My mind raced. I remembered the records about James and the notes about failure. It felt like I was diving deeper into something awful, something that shouldn't exist. Without thinking, I pushed a nearby shelf against the door and moved to the window. It was high, but not impossible. I needed to escape before they got in. My fingers gripped the edge, ready to pull myself up, when suddenly the door rattled violently. The sound sent waves of panic through me. They were trying to get in. "I'm serious. You need to know the truth about what happened in that room. You can't leave." Their voice was firm and desperate now. I hesitated, torn between the danger of the door and the urgency of their words. Who were they? What truth? Just then, I locked eyes with a figure approaching the broken window from outside. My heart raced. That wasn't my savior. It was someone else, and they were coming to find me. The figure at the window loomed larger as they approached. I couldn't make out their face, but their stance was aggressive. Panic surged through me, pushing me to act. I turned away from the window, bracing myself against the door with all my weight. Whoever they were, I couldn't let them in. "Hey," the new figure shouted, their voice echoing through the empty space. "You've got to get out of there." The urgency in their tone struck me as genuine, but trust was a fragile thing. I could hear the original figure still pounding on the supply room door, trying to reason with me, trying to warn me. Confusion clouded my mind. "Get away from the window," the newcomer shouted again. "It's not safe. They'll get you." What did that mean? I felt like I was in a trap, the very walls shifting around me. I slid down to a crouch, trying to become invisible, but my heart thudded loudly in my ears. I focused on the door, the relentless pounding intensifying, threatening to break through. "Let me help you," pleaded the figure outside the door. "Please, we don't have much time." The window rattled as more force was applied. My instincts urged me to find an escape, but every option felt like a gamble. Then, suddenly, the door burst open, sending the shelf crashing to the ground. I flinched, half expecting to see a monstrous figure ready to ambush me. Instead, it was the original voice. They stumbled into the room, breathing heavily, their eyes wide and frantic. "Close it, they're coming." They rushed to secure the door, pushing the fallen shelf back against it.
"Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on?" "They're not who they say they are," they replied, glancing at the now open doorway. The shadows deepened as another figure appeared in the hallway. This one wore dark scrubs, their face obscured by a mask. "We don't have time." I scrambled back toward the window. If this figure was a threat, I needed to leave. But my feet felt glued to the floor. "What do you mean?" The newcomer stepped inside, eyes darting around. They exuded confidence, but it was unsettling. "You're in danger. They made you a target. We have to go now." Just then, a sound like thunder echoed throughout the building, shaking the walls. I turned, heart racing, and saw the lights flicker overhead. The power was failing. What was that? "They're searching for you," the one next to me said urgently. "They won't stop until they find you." I finally turned to the original figure, searching their eyes for any sign of deceit. What experiments? "There isn't time to explain. Just trust me," they urged, panic coloring their voice. "You need to decide now." The force of the power outage was making the choice for me. I felt trapped, surrounded by danger on all sides. The shadows were coming for me, and I realized I wasn't as safe as I thought. "Please," I breathed, a mix of fear and desperation surging through me. "Tell me how we can escape." As I spoke, the door gave way to a muffled shout from the corridor. The figure in scrubs stepped closer, the urgency in their eyes unmistakable. "Then let's go, now." But just as I pushed my way past them, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from the other side of the corridor. Someone was closing in fast. I felt my pulse quicken as I glanced at the figure in scrubs, their eyes wide, reflecting the same fear I felt. "What do we do?" I whispered, panic creeping back in. "Follow me," they shouted, grabbing my arm and yanking me towards the dim corridor just outside the supply room. I hesitated for a split second, glancing back at the original figure. They were still barricading the door, struggling against the pounding on the other side. "Wait," I called, fear gripping me as I looked at them. "What about now?" The urgency in the figure's voice snapped me back to reality. I turned and sprinted, adrenaline coursing through me as I followed them down the hallway, the dim lights flickering ominously. As we moved further away, I could hear the voice shouting from behind the door. It was desperate, pleading. "Don't leave me. You have to trust me." The footsteps behind us were getting louder, a relentless pursuit that made my heart race even faster. I glanced back just in time to see the door burst open, and I barely held back a scream at the sight. The original figure was gone, leaving the corridor open for whoever or whatever was coming after us. "Come on," the figure in scrubs urged, their grip tightening on my arm as they pulled me around a corner. I stumbled slightly, but recovered, desperate to keep pace. "They're going to come after us." "Who?" I gasped, emotions surging. "You still haven't told me what's going on." The figure didn't respond, their focus razor-sharp on the path ahead as we ducked into another hallway, narrower and darker than the last. I could barely see, only flashes of light reflecting off the medical equipment lining the walls. I caught my breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "Tell me, please." My voice broke, drowning in fear and confusion. They finally turned to me, urgency etched deep into their features. "They're not just here for you. They've been watching everyone in this place. It's not what it seems." Before I could ask who they were, a loud crash echoed from the direction we had come, sending fresh waves of dread through me. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. "Move!" the figure shouted, pulling me along again. "There's no time. We have to get to the emergency exit." I barely registered the words, my mind racing back to the clamoring voices and unsettling shadows. I wanted answers, but the urgency had grown unbearable, and survival was seizing my thoughts. As we rounded another corner, I caught a glimpse of fluorescent lights. There! The exit's ahead! I felt a surge of hope, but it twisted into fear the moment I saw the figure standing in front of the exit, silhouetted against the light. It was another person, and just like before, their stance was aggressive. "Stop! You're not supposed to be here!" "Run!" the figure in scrubs yelled, propelling me forward as the aggressor stepped into the light, a glint of something metallic in their hand. That's when I saw it. A badge. "You can't escape!" they shouted, voice booming in the darkness. Before I could process what was happening, a sound cut through the air, an alarm. Red lights began to flash, bathing the hallway in a terrifying glow. "Go!" my companion urged, shoving me toward a side door just as the figure lunged for us. I didn't think. I darted through the door into a stairwell, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind me. My heart pounded louder than ever, but an all-consuming fear pushed me to keep running. I knew we were still far from safe, but as I descended into the unknown, one question blared in my mind. What had I just gotten myself into? I burst through the door of the stairwell and slammed it shut behind me, pressing my back against the cold metal as I gasped for air. The pounding footsteps grew fainter, but I didn't dare move. My chest felt tight and my mind raced. Who were those people? What did they want? I should have felt grateful to be away from the chaos, but the fear remained suffocating. I took a few shaky breaths, feeling the chill of the stairwell wrap around me like a heavy blanket. Suddenly, a soft voice broke through my anxious thoughts. "Are you okay?" The figure in scrubs was standing just a few steps below, eyes wide with concern. "We have to keep going. They'll be here any second." I nodded slowly, but said nothing. What was there to say? I was terrified and utterly lost. I took a step toward them, and they gestured for me to follow. We began to descend cautiously, each step echoing far too loudly in the silence of the stairwell. Just as we reached the next landing, I wanted to ask more questions about the hospital, about what was happening, but my mouth felt dry, and the pit in my stomach kept me silent. Then, everything went dark. The emergency lights flickered out, leaving us in complete darkness. My heart skipped a beat. "What's happening?" I whispered, panic creeping back in. The figure swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. "This is part of it. They're trying to isolate us." I felt my pulse quicken, fear thickening the air. They had mentioned isolation. Did that mean the others weren't safe either? Suddenly, I heard footsteps again, but this time they were different, heavier, more deliberate. "Quick, in here!" The scrub's figure pushed me toward a narrow door on the landing. We both squeezed inside just as another alarm started blaring, louder now. I slid in next to them, and they shut the door with a soft click, plunging us into almost complete darkness again. I had just enough light to see the outline of the room. It looked like a supply closet. Full shelves lined the walls, filled with medical supplies I didn't recognize. My head spun, processing the chaos outside while trying to find a glimmer of hope. "Do you know what's going on?" I felt the words tumble out, desperate for understanding. What do they want? "They're not just after you," the figure whispered, their voice shaking. "They're hunting down anyone who knows too much about the experiments." "Experiments?" I echoed, my mind racing. "What experiments?" "It's complicated." They came closer, their voice dropping to a near whisper. "They've been conducting tests on patients and staff, anyone who shows signs of resistance." As the pieces began to click together, dread settled in my stomach. I thought of the desperate face I'd seen behind the door. What if they were in on this too? Suddenly, there was a loud bang from outside the closet. My heart raced. Someone was shouting, and their voice was growing closer. "They're here!" The figure in scrubs looked at me, eyes wide. "We have to hold our breath." I did as told, going still in the musty air of the closet, fear gripping me tighter than ever. Whatever was happening was far worse than I had imagined. I had no idea who was coming or what they intended to do. All I knew was that no one could be trusted, and I had to find a way out. As the voices grew nearer, I braced myself for whatever came next. The door shook as someone pounded on it, and I held my breath, squishing against the wall of the closet. Every thud sent fresh waves of panic coursing through me. I shared the enclosed space with the figure in scrubs, our bodies nearly touching, both of us tense and silent. "Where are they?" a voice barked from outside, demanding and angry. "Search the whole floor." The figure beside me flinched, eyes wide with fear. "We need to find a way out, now." I nodded, but I wasn't sure how we could get out without being caught. My mind was racing. What if they found us here? What would they do? "Do you have a plan?" I whispered, though it felt like a terrible idea to speak at all. "Not yet," they replied, their voice wavering. "But we can't stay here." Footsteps moved away, but the panic still gripped me. "What if they come back?" "They will," they agreed, "but I need your help." The scrub's figure turned and felt along the wall, searching for something, anything. A glint of light caught my eye. There was a narrow gap between the shelves, just big enough to squeeze through, leading into another part of the building. "That!" I whispered, pointing toward the opening. "Good eye," they said, with a hesitant smile, but it quickly faded. "We should go before they return. We can't stay trapped like this." Taking a deep breath, we both maneuvered through the narrow passage. I felt a rush of cold air hit my face as we stepped into a dim corridor. The alarms from earlier still echoed, but it was quieter here. "Stay close," the figure said, glancing back. "Let's go to the utility room. It should give us a moment to think." We crept along the hall, sticking to the shadows. The overhead lights flickered sporadically, creating an eerie atmosphere. I kept my head down, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, a door swung open ahead, light spilling out. I froze, heart racing. Another figure stood there, casually dressed but with a determined look. "You shouldn't be here," they said, eyes narrowing in recognition. "Wait!" I exclaimed, feeling a desperate need to understand. "Are you with them?" "No, but you don't belong here either." The voice was urgent, the body blocking our path. "They're everywhere. You need to turn back." My heart sank. "What is going on?" I blurted out. "Who's chasing us?" "The people in charge," they replied, a flicker of fear crossing their face. "They'll do anything to keep this quiet. You have to listen. The experiments are more dangerous than you know." Before I could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, approaching fast. The scrub's figure inched closer to me, eyes wide with terror. "I need to know everything," I said. "We can't let them find us. We have to move." But before the stranger could respond, the footsteps grew louder. Panic surged in the air. "They're coming!" I shouted, and we turned to run. I took off down the hallway, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Then I heard it. A loud crash echoed from behind, and I glanced back just in time to see the door we'd just come through burst open. "Go!" the scrub's figure yelled, pushing me forward. "This isn't over yet." That was when I felt the wall give way behind me, and I stumbled into the unknown. I stumbled out of the hallway, crashing to the floor as the weight of uncertainty crashed over me. My heart raced, and for a moment I lay there, gasping for breath. The bright fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, illuminating the chaos that surrounded me. I blinked, trying to gather my thoughts, but it all felt like a whirlwind. Voices were echoing, darkness consumed everything I thought I knew, and a sense of foreboding was thick in the air. I scrambled to my feet, hands pushed against the cold tiles, and glanced around. Familiar equipment and scattered medical supplies littered the small utility room. Was it the same one I had seen before? I couldn't tell. Everything blurred together like a nightmare, but one thing was clear: I had to keep moving. The scrub's figure had darted past me, adrenaline momentarily fueling their escape, but I caught a fleeting glimpse. "Where are you?" I called after them, but all that echoed back was silence, engulfed in the dread that hung over me like a heavy fog. Panic surged in my chest again.
The voices would return, and I needed answers. I mustered my courage and moved to the door, peeking into the hallway. No one was there, just shadows beyond. Something twisted in my gut. Should I go back? Had they been captured? There were too many unknowns, and I was teetering on the brink of despair when a breath behind me startled me. "Stay low," the familiar voice whispered urgently. It was the figure in scrubs, their eyes wide and glimmering like two stars in the dark. "We have to find a way to escape. There's too much at stake." I stood straighter now, fear coiling into resolve. "What did you mean earlier? What's happening here?" "They've been using this hospital for something sinister," they replied, their voice barely above a whisper, urgency lacing every syllable. "Patients, staff, everyone is a potential test subject. They want to erase any evidence, eliminate the risk of exposure. And now you've stumbled too far into it." My pulse quickened. It was all starting to make sense, yet so many questions lingered. What's the connection to room 306? James? Are they connected to— "Not here," they shook their head, guiding me further into the shadows of the utility room as the alarm blared. "We need to get to the basement. It's messy, but we might find others who get it, maybe even a way to expose them." Before I could comprehend it all, they pulled me along. We moved quickly, dodging down a narrow passage that led to a stairwell. I glanced back, imagining the fearsome pursuit just behind us. I could almost hear their footsteps echo on the tiles, a reminder that danger still lurked in the corners of the building. As we descended, the walls seemed to close in. "What if they catch us?" I gasped, forcing the words out through a tightened throat. "Then we have to be ready," they replied. "Whatever you heard, the whispers, the warnings, they're real, but we can't let them dictate our fate." We finally reached the basement door, and I felt a rush of cold air waft over us as we pushed it open. The darkened room was dimly lit, but I could see shadowy outlines, figures hunched over in the corners. As our eyes adjusted to the darkness, I recognized some faces among them. They were nurses, doctors, people I reasonably presumed worked in this hospital. Yet something in their expressions felt lost. "Help us," the figure in scrubs said, stepping forward as if to break the tension. "We're searching for answers. We need to take action before it's too late." They nodded, acknowledging us with careful glances. "You shouldn't be down here," one of the nurses said, wary yet curious. "If they find you—" "For them, it's about control," the scrubs figure interjected. "The way they're using patients, there's a deeper connection, even to room 306. We need to expose this to the outside." Before I could respond, the loud bang of a door echoed through the hallway. The alarm still howled, and I felt my heart lurch. "They're coming," the figure shouted, pulling me deeper into the shadows. "Get ready."
"Whatever you do, don't panic." I nodded, swallowing my fear as adrenaline shot through me again. The weight of the situation pressed down on me like an anvil, and I realized something fundamental. We were all in this together. But fear still loomed, knowing that we were fighting against something bigger, something dark. The voices were getting louder as I took a deep breath. I scanned the room for anything that could help us escape, but questions still swarmed in my mind. "What if we make it out?" I asked, knowing there would be no clear answers. "Then we fight back," the figure in scrubs said firmly, and for the first time I believed them. But deep down, uncertainty lingered. Even if we escaped, what awaited us beyond those doors? Would the world believe us? Would we ever truly uncover the truth behind the shadows of room 306? In that moment, I realized something would have to change, but its consequences remained unclear, leaving behind a frightening ambiguity that tainted the thrill of fragmented escape. We'll find a way. We have to. But as we prepared to face whatever came next, I couldn't shake the feeling that the true danger was just beginning. Everything felt unresolved, an unsettling balance teetering on the edge of deeper darkness.